In the lesson today, you're going to work on dividing integers, and we're going to discover what the rules are for dividing integers by using our rules for multiplication. And in the ticket at the top, it says to write 2 multiplication and 2 division sentences using the following integers, 3, 5, and 15. So you're going to use those numbers. You're going to make 2 multiplication problems and 2 division problems. So from the multiplication facts, we know that 3 times 5 equals 15, and we also know that 5 times 3 equals 15. Okay? And division is going to undo the multiplication that we do for these facts. So if I have an answer of 15, if I take 15 and I divide it by the 3, well then my answer has to be equal to 5. Okay? And similar to that, if I take the 15 and I divide it by the 5, well, this time my answer has to be equal to 3. Okay, so these are the 2 multiplication and 2 division facts that we know for the numbers 3, 5, and 15. And it says from your entry ticket, you know the first rule of integer division. Okay, if we look at both of these rules here, or both of these examples, we see that the numbers that we're using are positive. A positive divided by a positive is equal to a positive number, and it shows that in both cases. And so that's what we're going to write in down here. A positive number divided by another positive number is going to be equal to a positive number. We're going to develop 2 more rules for integer division by looking at this fact family, okay? 6, -3, and -18. And just like we did with the ticket example up above, we're going to create 2 multiplication and 2 division sentences using these numbers, 6, -3, and -18. So we're going to start by making the multiplication problems, okay? And I know from multiplying that 6 times -3 is equal to -18. Okay, I can also switch the order and say that -3 times 6 is equal to -18. And again, a positive times a negative or a negative times a positive. In each case, I get a negative answer. Okay, so now I'm going to create my division sentences that are related to these multiplication problems. If I start with -18, and I divide it by the 6, well then my answer has to be equal to -3 because of this fact right here. 6 times -3 is -18. That means that -18 divided by the 6 has to be -3. If I do -18 and I divide it by the -3, okay, well then my answer has to be equal to 6. Okay? Because -3 times 6 is -18. -18 divided by the -3 has to be equal to 6. Okay, and so now based off of these 2 divisions, I can see what the next 2 rules are. If I look at this top division problem, a negative divided by a positive equals a negative. And so I'm going to write that in here. A negative number divided by a positive number is equal to a negative number. Okay, so that's rule number 2. Rule number 3, if I look at the bottom division fact here, I see that a negative divided by a negative is equal to a positive number. A negative number divided by another negative number is going to give us a positive number. There's one more rule that we need to come up with, and we're going to create our own fact family with 2 negative numbers, and they have to give a positive product. So again, we're going to write 2 multiplication and 2 division sentences. Okay, so I'm going to create my own here, and the numbers I'm going to use are -3, -4, and 12. And I'm going to use those numbers because I know by multiplication that -3 times -4 is equal to 12, and also -4 times -3 is equal to 12. A negative times a negative is a positive number. Okay, and now based off of these multiplication facts, I'm going to create my two division facts. If I take 12 and I divide it by the -3, then my answer has to be equal to -4, since -3 times -4 equals 12. Similarly, if I start with the 12 and I divide it by the -4, that's going to give me an answer of -3. Again, because -4 times -3 is equal to 12. Okay, and both of these division problems show our fourth rule. If we start with a positive number and we divide by a negative number, our answer has to be negative as well. So let's go ahead and write this in. A positive number divided by a negative number is going to give us a negative number. And that's your fourth rule for division. Apply what you know for integer division. Okay, we're going to write down two rules in the box here. All right, my first one got typed and my second one for some reason didn't get typed, but we're going to write that in anyway. A quotient will be negative if the divisor and the dividend have different signs. Different signs. Okay, the quotient is negative if the divisor and dividend have different signs. So a positive divided by a negative or a negative divided by a positive, that's going to give us a negative quotient. Our second rule is going to say a quotient is positive if the divisor and dividend have same signs. Okay, a quotient will be positive if the divisor and dividend have same signs. Okay, so that's a positive divided by a positive or a negative divided by a negative. In both cases, the quotient will be positive. The last section is going to be some practice for you. Okay, up here at the top, I've got 8 different division problems for you to answer, and then underneath we've got some review. We've got a row of multiplication, a row of addition, and a row of subtraction. Okay, and it's important not to confuse our rules for multiplication and division with our rules for addition and subtraction. Remember, with subtraction, you're going to first change these into an addition problem. Okay, and then when you've got your addition problems, remember, if the numbers have the same signs, we're going to add the absolute values. If the numbers have different signs, we're going to subtract the absolute values, and we're going to keep the sign of the number with the bigger absolute value.